Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the story of Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
You guys sent us a ton of stuff, articles, information. You really want to get to the bottom of this whole thing with his legal troubles and that pardon from his dad.
Yeah, it's a really, really fascinating story because, you've got law, politics, family, justice all wrapped up in one. So we're going to try to unpack all of that today and maybe even challenge a few perspectives along the way.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess to start off, everyone probably knows this already, but Hunter Biden, he's the son of President Joe Biden, right?
Yeah.
And his career has definitely been in the spotlight for a while now.
Yeah, and we'll for sure dig into all that, but especially the stuff in Ukraine and China, his business dealings over there, right? Those have been controversial, cause his dad's political roles. It's a bit of a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, everyone's talking about the laptop and all the federal investigations. And then the pardon that came right at the end, it's like the whole justice system and what's fair is being debated because of this whole story.
Yeah, okay. So to really understand this, we got to go back a bit, right? Back to Hunter Biden's early life, his career. He went through a horrible tragedy when he was young. He was in that car accident that killed his mom and his little sister. And he and his brother, Beau, were pretty badly hurt, too.
Yeah, that must have had a huge impact on him his whole life, especially his relationship with his father, President Biden.
Absolutely. They're super close.
Mm.
Everyone knows that. And it makes you think how that relationship might have shaped the path Hunter took.
So after law school, he worked for MBNA Bank.
Oh, yeah. MBNA, they were big donors to his dad's campaigns.
Exactly. And even back then, people were kind of raising eyebrows about that connection, thinking about conflicts of interest and stuff, even if it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you think.
Then he went on to co-found a lobbying firm and got appointed to the board of Amtrak by President George W. Bush. So it's not like he's just been on one side of the political aisle or anything.
He's definitely been in that world of politics and influence for a long time.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the specific business dealings. Now, the ones that have caused all this controversy. The most well-known one is probably Burisma Holdings, that Ukrainian natural gas company.
Right. In 2014, Hunter joined their board, and that was right around the same time his dad, who was vice president, then was super involved in U.S. policy in Ukraine.
And the timing definitely raised some red flags for a lot of people. Like, was Hunter using his family name to make money? Was he influencing U.S. foreign policy even?
Definitely critics were saying it was a clear conflict of interest. Even if there wasn't any illegal activity going on, at least it looked bad, and that's almost as bad in the public eye.
Right, and then you've got the whole thing with the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, and then he got removed from office.
Yeah, and there's no evidence that Hunter had anything to do with that directly. But again, the optics of it all didn't help him.
No, not at all. And the removal itself was controversial. Some people said the prosecutor was corrupt anyway, but others thought it was all political.
This is exactly what makes this whole thing so complicated. There's so much going on, international relations, political maneuvering, personal agendas. It's hard to know what's fact and what's just speculation.
Okay, let's move on to another one that was controversial. Hunter's involvement with BHR Partners, that Chinese investment firm.
Right, he was on their board from 2013 to 2020 and even got a 10% stake in the company in 2017.
Again, the timing was kind of key because things were pretty tense between the U.S. and China then, and people were worried about conflicts of interest and whether he was profiting from his dad's position.
Yeah, critics were pointing to this as another example of him blurring the lines between business and his family's political power.
Although Hunter's lawyer has said he didn't get any money for being on the board and hadn't seen any return on his investment.
Okay, that's an important point. But even if he wasn't directly profiting, the idea that there might be a conflict of interest is damaging, especially when you're dealing with sensitive stuff like geopolitics.
And it's important to remember there's two sides to this story. Some people see this as evidence of him doing something wrong, but others might say he was just trying to do business. Maybe not the smartest moves, but not illegal either.
And that's why this case is so interesting, right? It forces us to think about these uncomfortable questions about power and family and where the ethical lines are. Where do we draw the line between being ambitious in business and using your family name to get ahead? It's not just about Hunter Biden. These questions apply to so many situations.
So beyond those business dealings, there's also Hunter's personal life and the legal issues he's had that really started grabbing attention.
Right. In late 2018, there was this federal investigation looking into potential tax violations and money laundering related to his business. All of that marked a big shift in the whole story about Hunter Biden.
And those investigations led to charges against him in June 2023. He agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges for not paying income tax.
And there was a felony gun charge for having a gun illegally, and he agreed to enter this pretrial diversion program for that.
Yeah, what is a pretrial diversion program exactly?
It's like an alternative to going through the whole prosecution process. They usually use it for first-time offenders. You have to complete certain requirements like drug treatment or community service, and if you do, the charges get dismissed.
Okay, so kind of a second chance.
Yeah, but the deal fell apart in court in July 2023. The judge didn't accept the terms, and then Hunter changed his plea to not guilty.
Wow, so it wasn't over at all.
No, and right after that, the U.S. attorney who was leading the investigation got appointed as special counsel, which shows you how serious this whole thing had become and how politically sensitive it was. I mean, this was all happening during President Biden's first term.
Yeah, and then things escalated even more in September 2023 when he was indicted in Delaware on 3 federal firearms charges and then another indictment in California on 9 tax charges, 3 felonies, and 6 misdemeanors.
Yeah, he pleaded not guilty to all of that, the tax and the gun charges. So it was looking like there was going to be this huge legal battle that could have had big consequences, not just for Hunter, but for his dad's presidency, too.
And then in June 2024 came the trial in Delaware on those gun charges, and he was found guilty on all 3 felony counts.
That was historic. It was the first time ever that a child of a sitting U.S. president had been convicted in a criminal trial. The weight of that verdict was huge. The consequences could have been really serious.
But then he changed his plea to guilty on all 9 of the tax charges in California in September 2024. So he avoided another trial.
Probably trying to minimize the prison time he might get. It was a smart legal strategy, but it shows you how high the stakes were for everyone.
Yeah, but he still could have gone to prison.
Yeah.
Sentencing was supposed to be in December 2024, but then came the big twist.
Right. December 1st, 2024, President Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter, a full and unconditional pardon. And everyone was shocked. The whole political world was talking about it. The debate about justice and family ties and presidential power just exploded again.
Yeah, it was really controversial because before that, President Biden and his staff had always said Hunter would be treated like anyone else facing legal problems.
And then this happened. It looked like he changed his mind completely. And a lot of people started saying he was abusing his power to protect his son. It made people question if there really is equal justice for everyone, or if people connected to the White House play by different rules.
In the White House statement, President Biden said he believed his son had been prosecuted unfairly and selectively.
Basically, he was saying Hunter was targeted maybe for political reasons.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Was Hunter Biden really treated differently because of who his father is? Or was he just facing the consequences of what he did, no matter his family name?
It gets to the core of how we see fairness and accountability in our society. Is there one set of rules for the powerful and another for everyone else? Can you really separate personal relationships from the law?
These are huge questions.
Yeah, with no easy answers, and that's just part of what makes this story so captivating. So let's keep going, right? This this added another layer to this already complicated and controversial situation. It's put the relationship between power and privilege under a microscope, and people are debating whether what the president did was justified or if he just went too far with his power.
I think it's clear this story isn't just about Hunter Biden. It's about the anxieties we have as a society about political influence and how hard it is to define justice when everyone has a different idea about what's fair.
Exactly. And now with Donald Trump back in the White House after that last election, the effects of this pardon are probably going to be felt for years to come. Don't forget, President Trump can't undo this pardon.
Okay, before we get into all that, though, and the bigger questions, there's one more big piece of the puzzle we have to address, the laptop controversy.
Oh, yeah, this is where things get really interesting during the 2020 election. A laptop that supposedly belonged to Hunter Biden appeared out of nowhere, and everything on it became this huge political debate, and the media was all over it.
It was supposedly full of emails and other sensitive stuff that raised even more questions about Hunter's business dealings and those conflicts of interest. It was a total bombshell, and it made this whole story even more complicated.
At first, people were questioning if the laptop and everything on it was even real. Some people said it was Russian disinformation or a political hit job, but then federal investigators confirmed it was authentic.
Yeah, and then in June 2024, it was actually used as evidence in Hunter's trial on those gun charges. So that really cemented its place in this whole story, and it fueled the debate about the accusations against him and, of course, the presidential pardon.
The laptop brings up some important questions about how we figure out what's real and what's fake, especially these days when technology can spread both so easily. It also shows how important it is to be media literate and to really think critically about the information we see out there.
It seems like with every new development, in this case, it just makes people more divided. It's so hard to find common ground when everything's so polarized.
It really is, but we have to try, right? We have to be critical and look at the evidence and talk to each other even when we disagree.
We've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive into Hunter Biden, his life, his career, the business stuff, the legal battles, the laptop, and the pardon. It's a story that just keeps going and it's dividing the nation.
It really makes you think about justice and accountability and that tricky balance between family and the law.
So what are your thoughts so far? What stands out to you about all of this? Let us know in the comments and we'll keep going with this deep dive together.
So we've gone through a lot of the facts, right? The timeline about Hunter Biden, but now let's really dig into the thing that's got everyone talking, that presidential pardon. I mean, it's caused a huge uproar, and you can see why it's not every day a president pardons someone in their own family, especially with a legal history like Hunter's.
Yeah, it really does feel like that's where everything comes to a head. We were talking about business dealings and conflicts of interest, but now we're talking about the power of the president. What justice even means. Does everyone really face the same law?
Right. President Biden said in that statement that the prosecutions against Hunter were selective and unfair. Like he was suggesting that Hunter was a target maybe because of politics.
That's interesting, but also makes you wonder, so does that mean if you're connected to powerful people, you can get away with things? Or was Hunter Biden really treated differently just because his dad was president?
It's the question, isn't it? It all comes down to prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutors have some leeway in deciding who they go after, what charges they bring.
So are you saying there's a chance Hunter Biden was singled out even if he did do something wrong?
It's possible, and it's a debate that's going to go on for a long time. Some people say the charges against Hunter weren't that serious, especially the tax stuff. They say he paid everything back and he cooperated with the authorities.
But then wouldn't that mean anyone who can afford to pay back taxes could get away with not paying them in the first place? It seems like that could be a problem.
Exactly. That's the flip side of the argument. People are saying this pardon sets a bad example. Like it's saying there are two different justice systems, one for the rich and powerful and one for everyone else. It just makes people more cynical about the whole system, especially when it comes to politicians.
And we can't forget about when this pardon happened. It was right after that crazy election where President Biden lost and Donald Trump won again.
Right. The timing is super important. Some people think that President Biden, knowing he was on his way out, decided to pardon Hunter to protect him from maybe being prosecuted under a Trump administration.
Yeah, everyone knows President Trump was really critical of Hunter Biden during his first term. And during the campaign, he kept saying Hunter was corrupt and used that laptop thing to attack President Biden's character.
Absolutely. So it does make sense to think of the pardon as a way to shield Hunter from something that might be politically motivated prosecution. It shows you how much distrust there is between the old administration and the new one, and it makes you worry about politics getting mixed up with the justice system.
It's like a political game they're both playing, trying to protect their own side. But what about everyone else? What about the regular people?
That's a good question. This whole thing really shows how much influence politics can have on the law and how hard it is to make sure justice is fair for everyone, no matter who they know or what party they support.
It's been really heavy talking about all the legal and political stuff, but we can't forget that there are real people at the center of this. Hunter Biden has been through so much public scrutiny, it must be overwhelming.
Yeah, try to imagine what it's like to have your personal life, your mistakes, your family all over the news with your dad's presidency on the line. It's a level of attention most of us can't even imagine.
And for President Biden to watch his son go through all of this, knowing that some of it might be because of his own career, that must be incredibly hard as a father.
It reminds you that even the most powerful people in the world still have families, and they go through tough times too. It makes the whole situation more human and makes you think about how much this must have affected everyone involved.
It feels like everything about this story is an ethical dilemma. Every new detail makes you question power and justice and what it means to have family in the public eye.
Totally. And the pardon itself is a perfect example of that. On the one hand, you could say President Biden was just being compassionate. He saw how much his son was going through and he put family first.
But on the other hand, you could say he abused his power, that he went against the law to protect his son from facing consequences that anyone else would have to deal with. It's like these two sets of values are clashing and there's no easy answer.
And that's why the story has hit such a nerve with people on both sides of the political spectrum. It makes us think about our own beliefs about fairness and accountability and how much power the president should have.
So now that we're in this new era with President Trump back in charge, what do you think about the long-term effects of this pardon?
I don't think we heard the last of Hunter Biden.
No.
This pardon has Definitely change things politically, and people are going to keep talking about it and scrutinizing it, especially with President Trump's history with the Bidens.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if there will be more investigations or if the new administration will try to do something to get back at them.
It's definitely possible President Trump isn't afraid to go after his rivals, and he might see this as a chance to make the Bidens look even worse by digging up old dirt on Hunter.
It's like this endless cycle of political revenge, each side using the justice system as a weapon.
And that's really dangerous. It makes people lose faith in the justice system. It makes them think there are two sets of rules, one for the powerful and one for everyone else.
This whole thing is a symptom of a bigger problem. People don't trust institutions anymore. They think the system is rigged to help the elites. And it's not just in politics, it's in finance, in the media, everywhere.
You're right. This case has become the symbol of that anxiety, the gap between the rich and the poor, the connected and the disconnected.
And where does this leave our democracy?
That's something we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to talk about what might happen because of this, the ethical problems it brings up and what it all means for power and justice in America.
Okay, so we've spent all this time really digging into this Hunter Biden story, his whole life, his career, those business deals, the laptop, the legal stuff, and that presidential pardon that everyone's still talking about.
Yeah, and it seems like it's just about one guy, right? But when you really look at it, it's about so much more power, justice, family, what it means to be accountable when you're in a democracy.
And we saw how this whole thing became a political weapon, both sides using it to attack each other.
It really shows you how divided we are, not just about politics, but about fairness and privilege and whether the law applies to everyone equally.
Some people think Hunter Biden got a raw deal, that they went after him because of his last name, that he was just a pawn in some political game.
And then others think he got special treatment because of who his dad is, that the pardon was totally unfair and that it sends a message that some people are above the law.
Everyone's got an opinion,
Yeah.
and it's hard to know what's true and what's not, especially with all the social media stuff and the news being so biased these days.
Exactly. We have to think for ourselves, look at the evidence, and be open to hearing different points of view, even if we don't agree.
We've tried to show you all sides of this story, the arguments, the legal details, and the human side of it all.
But in the end, you have to decide for yourself, what do you think about the Hunter Biden story? What does it tell you about our democracy?
Does it make you wonder if our justice system is really fair? Does it make you worry about how much power and money influence things?
These are big questions, and we hope you keep thinking about them. Don't just settle for easy answers or the stuff that already fits with what you believe.
Keep digging. Look for different perspectives. Talk to people who see things differently.
That's what a deep dive is all about, right? It's not just about learning stuff. It's about using that knowledge to think critically and have real conversations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's what we want you to think about. What are you going to do with all this information?
Are you going to talk to other people about it? Are you going to question your own beliefs? Are you going to use this to have better conversations and try to make society more fair and just?
We hope this deep dive helped you understand the Hunter Biden story better. But even more than that, we hope it made you want to keep learning and exploring and engaging with the world around you.
Keep those deep dive requests coming, and we'll see you next time.